Hi everybody. Um, I'm Mary Jane Budd. I'm a coaching psychologist, and I work in the sort of performance and well-being area. I use my knowledge and skills as a coach and a psychologist, and I work with people to make them feel better. So I try and enhance their wellness. My focus really is with women who are experiencing sort of consequences of perimenopause and menopause. And on my new Facebook page, I have just completed an A to Z of learning and strategies around the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. I use perimenopause and menopause a lot. It's quite a mouthful. So if I just say menopause, I'm talking about those different aspects of the different stages, really. And I'll show you that in a moment. When I was doing the A to Z throughout February, I started with A for awareness. And I was trying to get you to think about how aware you were of your symptoms. And I want to spend this session looking a little bit more at becoming aware of our feelings, what our bodies are doing, and generally where the symptoms are having an impact on our lives. So that's what I'm going to do today. I don't think it's going to be too long today, so that's quite nice too. And then if you've got any questions, if you're on my Facebook page, then please do ask questions on that page. Or I've given you my email address. I realised that I'm presenting my slides on the right of me, so I'm going to keep looking over there, which is a pretty, it's not very slick. So what I want to do first really is to show you again the little infographic from Talking Menopause that I have. It lists about 30 symptoms. And these 30 symptoms are quite common. And as I read them out, I just want you to make a tally or a note of the number that you've experienced. Some people say there's about 54 symptoms of menopause, but on here I've just got the 30. So let me read them out to you. Hair loss, irritability, irregular periods, nausea, weight gain, cystitis, anxiety, loss of libido, memory lapses, mood swings, hot flushes, brain fog, itchy skin, palpitations, dry skin, bladder weakness, bloating, night sweats, muscle tension, headaches, dry eyes, sleep disorder, brittle nails, vaginal dryness, joint pain, difficulty concentrating, emotional changes, low mood, fatigue, and depression. So I just wonder how many of those symptoms you've experienced. Maybe some of them are more impactful than others. We tend to split the symptoms up into physiological symptoms and psychological symptoms. And it's really the psychological symptoms that I deal with mainly. But any of these, what I like about this diagram is that it doesn't sort of highlight one more than the other, because we can all be impacted by any of these symptoms quite severely. Sometimes you see the symptoms as a word cloud, but that usually emphasises one more than another, and I think that's a little bit misleading, because we are all individuals and we're all on this individual journey of ours through menopause, and therefore we might find that there are some symptoms that really impact us, but this is very different to maybe a friend of yours. So what is menopause? It's really the time when we stop having periods. So we stop producing the hormones that lead to our menstrual cycle. And the definition of menopause is when you've not had a period for at least 12 months. And the time leading up to the menopause, which can be, I'm afraid, up to about 10 years before, is called perimenopause. So the average age of menopause is 51, which means I'm afraid that if you're in your early 40s, you may already be experiencing some of the symptoms of perimenopause. And then after your periods have stopped, you're in postmenopause. But that doesn't mean to say you're not going to experience symptoms during postmenopause, because your ovaries may still be producing some hormones, and that fluctuates. It's only when the ovaries completely stop producing hormones do we not have that fluctuation in hormones. As one medical practitioner once said to me, one of your ovaries is shriveled, and we're not too worried about that because that means it's stopped completely. Not a particularly nice way of looking at it, but yeah, until that happens, our ovaries may or may not be producing some hormones. And it's really that fluctuation of hormones that gives us this sort of array of symptoms. And one of the reasons why I'm going through all this is that we seem to be quite good at just getting on with life. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit of a story, actually. And I don't know whether you can resonate with this, but I think most women, especially women of my age, in their 50s, when we were having our periods and our menstrual cycle, we didn't pay too much attention to it. So we weren't particularly aware of it. And I'm pleased to say that I think the younger generation of women are much more aware of their menstrual cycle, to the point where they track it even. And you can get all sorts of apps and all sorts of different ways of tracking your menstrual cycle now. And I actually think that's a really positive thing, because during your menstrual cycle, you are having these fluctuations in hormones. So I'll just tell you this little story of this woman who she woke up one morning and she felt really tearful. Her eyes were just leaking, and she spent the whole day being quite sad. She found the slightest little thing would set her off. So perhaps she just dropped something on the floor, and that would she'd just burst into tears, and it was quite uncontrollable. And she just spent the whole day like this, and by the time she went to bed, she was quite exhausted because she'd been so tearful all day, and she didn't realise, she didn't really have a reason to be like that. Nothing had happened that made her feel sad. And the next day she woke up and she went to the toilet, and lo and behold, her period had started. And it was only at that point where she thought to herself, that's why I was so tearful yesterday. That explains it. And this sort of went on month after month. And I don't know whether that sounds familiar to you, but certainly that was my experience, that I wasn't really aware of what was going on, with those hormone fluctuations throughout my menstrual cycle. And I was a really, well, I still do get migraines, but I had very bad menstrual migraines, and they'd always come a couple of days before my period, and it always used to take me by surprise, even though I had quite a regular menstrual cycle, because of the drop in progesterone that happens just before we have our period. I would get a really bad migraine headache. And quite recently, I was giving a talk to a mixed-aged group on menopause. And I showed that infographic of the menopause symptoms. And a young woman who probably was in her early 30s recognized a lot of these symptoms. And she said, these symptoms occur through my menstrual cycle. And I said to her, well, yeah, during your menstrual cycle, you will have your hormones will fluctuate. Estrogen reaches a peak quite early on in the cycle, and then progesterone reaches a peak and then drops. So it's not surprising that you'll recognize some of these symptoms. The symptoms are due to dips in those hormone levels, and this is exactly what's happening during the menopause. So I think it's fair to say that as women, we're very used to just putting up with things. And if we put up with things for too long, they just become normalized. But these symptoms aren't normal. It's not normal to lack in energy. It's certainly not normal to wake up every day lacking in energy. It's not normal to wake up multiple times a night. It's not normal to have vaginal dryness that leads to recurrent urinary tract infections. And I could go on with this. But for far too long, really, we've not been discussing it. We've not been educating ourselves about it or being educated about it. And luckily, I think that's changing. I think we're talking a lot more about it, but there's a long way to go. And quite recently, there's been quite a lot in the news. Again, the newspapers have got a hold of these sort of these stories and trying to raise awareness. And the latest one was that, the workplace may become a more menopause-friendly place because there are now guidelines that are supporting reasonable adjustments for women going through menopause. It doesn't mention anything about treatment though, and next month I'm going to do a presentation on hormone replacement therapy. So what I want to really put to you today is that if we become more aware of what's happening to us and start recognizing symptoms for what they are, we can then put into place strategies. We can put in place ways of perhaps addressing some of the symptoms, at least alleviating it a little bit. So how do we become more aware? Well, firstly, we need to stop and be much more in the present moment. And I'm sure you've all heard of mindfulness. Mindfulness is all about being in the present. We have, as human beings, we've got this great advantage, so-called advantage, where we can learn from our past experience and use it to plan for the future. And so we spend a lot of time in the past and the future, and we're getting, I think, worse and worse at doing that time traveling between past and future, and really not putting our focus on what's happening in the here and now. So I would encourage you to start training yourself back into that, being more aware of what's going on in the here and now. And we can do that it takes small steps to do that and build that up. So it's a bit like a muscle that we've got to try and build up. And there are various techniques for that, but it's really just about stopping for a moment, pausing for a moment in whatever you're doing, and actually really seeing what's around you, or really feeling what you're eating. So often we're eating our breakfast, aren't we? And we're scrolling on our phone, or the TV's on with breakfast news, and we're not actually thinking about what we're eating at all. We're just shoveling it in. So really try and spend some time and just try and teach yourself to slow down a little bit And you can do this at various times. Maybe whenever you put the kettle on, use cues to sort of remind yourself to just slow down a little bit. So every time you put the kettle on, it'd be like, right, I'm going to really focus on the present moment. And your mind will start wandering, and that you have to bring yourself back to the boiling kettle and actually watch yourself pour the water into the cup. When you're making your cup of tea, stirring with a spoon and listening to the sound it's making, and pulling, feeling the heaviness of the tea bag as you pull it out of the cup, and pouring milk in and seeing, the change in the colour of the tea as you pour the milk in. And then actually spend some time sipping that cup of tea. A couple of minutes isn't going to make any difference to whatever you're doing that day. So really spend some time in the present moment. And what this will do is it will start building up that idea that we can be a little bit more present. And we can do this outside as well. We can go for a walk and really have a look around us. Choose a theme for a walk, even if it's like a regular walk you do to perhaps the train station. Then you can really look at the houses that you're passing. What colour is your next door neighbour's door? What sort of fences have people got in their gardens? And we're now coming into spring, and the flowers are coming. So have a look to see how many different types of flowers you can see. So all these little things that will bring us into the present moment. And we can do things like set an alarm on our phone. So at least sort of 3 times a day, we'll actually stop and pause and think about how we're actually feeling at that moment. This is a really good one to do actually if you're feeling a bit stressed or you've got a very busy time ahead of you. If you put sort of 3 time points, 3 alarms on your phone, and at each time point, just jot down how you're actually feeling. Are you feeling a bit apprehensive? Are you feeling a bit anxious? Are you excited? And then at the next time point, what are you feeling there? And at the final time point later on in the day, maybe you're feeling a bit tired by then, or you're relieved, or you feel very satisfied with what you've achieved. And again, it's just about stopping and giving yourself that time. And what I want you to do really is to then apply that mindfulness, that being in the present, to those symptoms, and really note when you're experiencing those symptoms. And one of the ways you can do this is just to write down each evening or each morning what symptoms you've experienced that day. So take a copy of the infographic that I put up earlier on the slide, and perhaps tick off, which symptoms have you had today, and think about maybe how severe those symptoms were, how much of an impact did they have on your day, and you can put a number to that. I'm going to summarise all this in a minute. Because sometimes we might think we're suffering more than we are, so it might have a quite positive effect. Sometimes when we think we're not sleeping at all, if you actually note down how much you're sleeping, so what time you went to bed, what time you've woken up in the middle of the night, how long it took before you went back to sleep, what time you woke up in the morning, you might actually realise that you're having more sleep than you thought. So it's almost like your mind playing tricks on you that you're not sleeping that much. Or it might be as bad or worse than you thought, and you're having less time, and no wonder you're feeling so tired. So none of these things will take up very much of your time during your day. It's just a little bit of spending time on yourself. I think we're very good at showing other people our kindness and generosity and love, but we don't really spend too much time with ourselves. So I've just summarised really on this slide that if we can become more aware, we want to be more in the present. We want to notice what's going on around us. And in doing that, we can then start to find different ways to alleviate some of the symptoms. So start by being more present, maybe do something like the kettle, exercise, or spend more time on your breakfast. So choose a time during the day when you can be mindful. Do that thing about setting an alarm on your phone for 3 times during the day. Doesn't have to be morning, lunchtime, and evening. You know, if you have very busy mornings, they don't start until lunchtime. You know, do lunchtime, afternoon, and evening, for example. So do whatever is easiest for you, and ask yourself, how do I feel right now? And be very honest. You know, just don't overthink it. Just write down how you're feeling. And then at the end of each day or at the beginning of each day, note down those symptoms. Note down what, list the symptoms you've experienced and give those symptoms a number from 1 to 5 to see how much that symptom has impacted your day. So 1 is only slightly, 2 is slightly, 3 is some impact, 4 is a lot of impact, and 5 is sort of this extreme impact on your day. And by doing this, you can start to sort of weigh up and see where your focus should be to alleviate the symptoms. It's really only when we become aware of these symptoms. Lots of people are really surprised when I show them that diagram at the beginning, you know, that list of symptoms. They didn't know that some of those symptoms were part of their sort of menopausal journey. So it's only when we become aware of our symptoms, bring them into awareness, that we can do something about them. And I'd really like to sort of urge you to not normalise those symptoms, not put up with them. A lot of people say, oh, my mum didn't have any symptoms of menopause. She just said she just got on with it. You know, why can't we just get on with it? Our lives are very different now to our mothers. There are very different stresses and pressures put on us. That's not to say our mothers had it easy. I'm not saying that at all. It was just very different. And of course, lots of other things have changed as well. Our diet has changed. Our exercise regimes are different. You know, our activity levels are different. So there's all sorts of other input really to us, coming from all different sides. Plus the fact that we have our parents to look after as well, or hopefully we have anyway. So don't normalise these symptoms. Don't just put up with it. I think we've put up with enough, you know, and don't get me started on the sort of health inequalities amongst men and women. But, you know, as women, we do seem to have put up with enough already. And let's hope that through us being educated about menopause, we can then pass on that education to not just our daughters, but to our sons as well, and to all the people around us. So we just need to, I think, become aware of things a little bit more. And in doing so, we can think about how we want to change those things, you know, what we can put in place. And some things are much more difficult than others. I mean, some of the physiological symptoms can be relieved through HRT, hormone replacement therapy. Some of the psychological symptoms, there are other strategies you can use as well. And it's about perhaps seeing when you're giving a scale to the impact on your lives, It might be that you're just not aware of how much of an impact it's having on you. And that's quite important as well. So what I'd like you to do is to try and follow that guidance on being more in the present, asking yourself how you're feeling, writing down your symptoms, and giving them a number from 1 to 5. And then perhaps asking me some questions about that. So let's start a sort of conversation about this, seeing whether you have been aware of symptoms in the past. Is that something that you've really focused on, or have you just been a bit oblivious to it, and just a lot of these symptoms just creep up on you as well, and before you know it, they're having quite a big impact on your lives, but you don't really know where it all started, and the symptoms change over time as well. So let's start having a conversation about this. Let's see whether we can give each other some tips, support each other with some of the impact that it's having on our lives. So just as usual, lighten the atmosphere a little bit with this little cartoon here. Always makes me laugh, the 7 Dwarfs of Menopause. So do write to me with some questions. You can either use my email address, which is at the beginning of this presentation, or, like I say, join the Finding the Light Through the Menopause Tunnel Facebook page. Thank you very much, everybody, and look forward to hearing your questions.